It's the It's My Time podcast with Asher Chua.
How are you guys doing today?
We're doing fantastic.
Great. How are you?
I'm doing well. I appreciate you a lot. I guess I appreciate you guys willing to join me on this meetup to just converse semi face to face, even though it's virtual, but it's still cool.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So I did check out your website a little bit, but I guess we're just having a conversation, and I kind of do this in a way, like sometimes it's for the podcast, other times it's really just getting to know people that I'm associated with through like the different groups, Breathe University, Extreme Branding, Extreme Execution, things like that. And well, maybe I should tell you a little bit about myself. I don't know if I'm doing a good job even introducing myself so far. But obviously I'm Asher. I live here in Georgia. I've been working in the construction industry the last 8 years. And within like the last 6 years or so, I like looked into motivation a little bit per request of a friend, just something to keep me motivated, kind of going through the everyday. And I came across ET, kind of started following his movement. And then since then, I've just been learning more and more from either people that are like entrepreneurial or just people that want a better life than the life that they've been given, what they've seen from their parents and things of that sort. So that's a little bit about me.
Nice. I like that. And well, you cut yourself short because you also have It's My Time podcast.
Right.
That is, I was looking at your website and the format and what you're doing. It's pretty amazing. I think it's a very cool concept.
Thanks. Every time I look at it, I'm just like, don't get caught up on the numbers. I just started it on, I put the first podcast out in October of 2019. And that was from like pondering over it for the last year. And then finally going to one of the conferences in August and just deciding, okay, I need to do this before the end of the year. And I put a date on it. It was like by the end of October 2019, you need to create a business or create an idea and just realize it. And granted, I did try to hide it. I just kind of wrote it down in this notebook right here. And I was like, oh yeah, forget about that. Just go bury it and put it away. But thankfully, being in groups like this and having conversations with people that kind of like check you, or they don't necessarily have to check you, but like if they're doing something and you're not, you kind of feel bad for just like, oh, okay, like, hey, I did all this stuff and what'd you do? And it's like crickets. It's like,
I hear you. And that's what the accountability call is good for, ensuring that
right.
You feel like a straggler. You're like, man, I got to step my game up.
Right.
And much like you, we did the same thing.
Yeah, we went to a conference in August of last year, 2018,
Okay.
the Take Control in San Francisco. And right after the conference, I guess Lovey more so than myself have been talking about podcast or doing something. And after the conference, he was just like, you know what, we're just going to do it. And just kind of let the chips fall where they may. And we put out officially, it was October? It was October.
No, September 5th was the very first one that came out, our first release. We went end of August.
No, August 6th is when we went.
Yeah, well, it was September 5th was the first release. I mean, we came home, I went for it, and like you, it was written down. And then I was like, I don't do this, I'm not going to do this.
Yeah.
Right.
And if you listen to our first podcast, it was horrible.
It wasn't horrible.
But it was done. But
it was done. That's the important thing, because it's like, I guess where they say humans are just very self-critical, and whatever you do, you're going to think it's bad, whether it's like your first public speech or your first like venture or whatever you're doing. It always seems like man, I wish it could have been this or that, but it's like, hey, you know what? It's something. Like one's more than zero.
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's right.
That's great. So it was September of this year?
Of 2018.
2018. Gotcha. So
And
you guys are got a
sounds
full
great.
year in.
Yeah, it's been a full year.
This upcoming week, what we're taping this weekend will be episode 69.
Nice.
We do it once a week.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So kind of walk me through it. How does it work?
So we come together. Here's the thing. People ask if it's scripted so nothing we've done thus far has been scripted. It's been,
Gotcha.
we'll come up with, we're either telling our story, things that have happened in our particular lives, or we'll have some people, after we've had a few episodes, people started writing in and they would ask, well, what about this topic? How do you guys deal with this and that? Or we'll see something during the week and something will happen at work or a discussion or family. And we'll come home and talk about it. And there have been plenty of times where we're like, wait. Save it for the podcast.
Yeah.
It's never as good on the podcast as it is when we're just talking. I'm like, why didn't I, like the original, I'm like, I tried to, okay, what did I say then? But
gotcha.
never just, so we have to walk around almost like with little tape recording devices.
The phone has become my best friend as far as I'm out driving, for work. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I have this idea. And I'll hit that voice memo to put the idea down. But the whole premise is that we wanted to create something that was going to be a tool or a resource where a person could kind of be a fly on the wall and listen to a conversation between a married couple and our discussions. We talk all day long. I mean, we talk probably 3-4 times a day. And we just wanted to share that and our progress over the triumphs and challenges that we've had.
Gotcha. That's amazing. I feel like I'm seeing a little bit more of it. Maybe it's from like being in Breathe University and kind of being around people that value marriage. I see that as like a very healthy progression where people are like yourselves are wanting to show other people like this is what it's like to be married and here are things that you can look forward to.
Yeah, I feel like so many times, when people, they talk about marriage, just in general, it's always about the 50% or whatever the percentages that get divorced or, this is how many are single moms or domestic violence or what have you. But there's never a big rah-rah about having a loving marriage or a great partner. You don't really see that. And I know for myself, when I was growing up, it was almost like, oh, that's fairy tale. That doesn't happen in real life. Stop reading those books. That's just romantic. And, that kind of stuff doesn't happen in your marriage or in your life. And I've always been kind of like, don't issue me a challenge, because I kind of felt like that was a challenge a little bit. So I'm like, oh, I'm not going to settle for anything other than what it is that I really want. And I wanted what I wanted. So it was up to me to help make it happen. And I feel like with us being out, just putting it out there, like it's okay to be in love with your partner. It's okay to want to spend time. It's great to say I love you and just be hugged up. And, so many people are against that kind of thing. I feel like, so I feel it was very important for us to be like, no, let's tell our story because we are in love and we still have that, I'm like, oh, I can't wait to see my husband. I gotta, whatever. It's not just like, it didn't go away just in the early stages of the relationship, the euphoric, stage. Like euphoria can last. You just have to make it last. So. Gotcha.
And that's what you guys are trying to show people.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, and there's another component to that. When we were, well, first off, we almost succumbed. We still have, it's not like it's been peaches and cream the whole time.
No, sometimes I still want to.
But early in our marriage, our oldest child, our son, he's 25 now. But he developed a complex where he was almost embarrassed to have a 2-parent household that he was coming home to. Because a lot of his friends, a lot of his cousins, were going home to single-parent household. That's what I grew up in. That's what my wife grew up in. And he almost felt like, people in our family used to make fun of us, believe it or not. And they were like, oh, you guys are the Huxtables. Oh, what do the Huxtables do now? And I'm like,
that's true.
When did that become a negative thing? And hey, we're not the Huxtables. I mean, we got challenges. I mean, early on, our lights were about to get cut off, the whole 9 yards. But when did that become negative? And we wanted to make sure that people within our specific community understand that it's okay to be in a loving relationship, that there is no, if we're African American, right? As you can see us.
Right.
Surprise. But it's okay to have two parents in the household. It's okay to have discipline. It's okay for, dad to, to struggle and then, get an education. It's okay for for them to come back together and have conversations rather than arguments. I mean, we've dealt with the whole nine, and yet somehow or another, we were still the ones that were being made fun of by some of our cousins and siblings, that we weren't living real life. But I was like, I don't know, my life feels just as real as what you're going through.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
So would you say that that's something definitely from both of your backgrounds, the environment it's always kind of presented the like you're supposed to struggle, but it's like in the picture of marriage, it's always like it's never supposed to be pretty. Like, don't go watch those like Disney movies. Like,
exactly.
Don't be reading those books around here because it's like that's not our reality.
Exactly. That's you just hit the nail on the head. As far as I'm concerned, that has always been, I've always, get your head out of the clouds kind of type of statements, and that's not real life. That's, that's fantasy. That's this. That's, and I believe that. I really did believe that. But even though I did believe it, I'm like, it just within my soul. When something your spirit just feels like, I don't know. There could be, So I've always had that type of pull to where I'm like, I'm not doing that. Even in past relationships, you're like, oh, you're tripping because he's doing that. Like but I don't accept that. So if that's a problem for me, that might be okay for the masses, but for me, I didn't like it, so people thought that I was, I'm bougie, I'm all these different things because I don't accept, what other people accept in a relationship. I'm just like, I'm just not going to, and so if I have to hold out and I have to wait, then I just have to wait. Because what's that movie? I Could Do Bad All By Myself. That kind of was like, I'm like, I can do that all by myself. I don't need to do that with my partner. But that was really the norm, basically. Every in relationships that I've seen, that I witnessed, I've seen people, stay together, but genuine, true happiness, I felt like that eluded a lot of the couples that I knew. So like, no, I don't want that. It's not that, like Lovey said, we don't have our challenges. Sometimes I'm just like, oh my God, just go in the other room, but that it doesn't last long. It's like, we both take a breath. Okay. So this is what I was trying to say, so we were able to come back maybe quicker than a lot of other couples. We don't hold the grudges that, we've seen, and we don't keep rehashing the past or whatever. We get it out there, we say it, we put it out there. Okay, let's deal with it in the way that we deal with it, and let's move on, because we cannot let it tear down what we've worked so hard to build up. Plus, we have a son and we have 2 daughters. And I want as corny as my husband is, Lovey is corny. But as corny.
I high five you to that. It's okay.
But I want them, when they think about love and a relationship or the guy, I want them to think of how their dad treated their mom. And they even say that, well, mom, because dad, he does XYZ for you, or dad, he, don't, if he feels like they're getting out of line, I'm like, I can handle it. But he's like, no, that's my wife. She was my wife before she was your mom. So that protectiveness, that's what he does. And they see that. So I'm like, that's what I want them to see. That's what I want them to want. I don't want them to just be accepting anything, any old guy, You gotta earn the right to be with my daughters. I want them to feel that way about themselves. So I believe it's what we teach them. What they see. It's gonna be it is not always what they do. You don't always emulate what you see, but at least you would have that solid foundation and that background. You know where you came from, so you can always maybe reach back into that and be like, oh, that wasn't how I was raised. So this is what I want. I talked a lot. I'm sorry.
You're good.
It comes back to that old adage about children hear 0% of what you say and 100% of what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's funny. We were getting advice about marriage and what we should and shouldn't do from people that were extremely unhappy. My dad, you know, he's on his fourth wife, and he's extremely happy. There was different stages of his life. My mother, before she passed away, I mean, this was her third marriage. You know, and it was odd. These people that were on their fourth and their third marriages trying to tell us how to be married.
Right.
And we were explaining to them that, you know, but they knew love.
I was going to say, well, I mean, you know, a lot of times when people see mistakes, they don't do this or don't do. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just want to throw it out there. It's not always, you know.
It wasn't always the negative. There was a lot of positive there, but it was always funny to me. It's like the person that doesn't have children trying to tell everybody how to raise their kids.
Right. I do my best to keep my mouth shut. It's like, nope. Sometimes I'm like, oh, well, I've been studying this. And it's like, maybe I should just go sit in the corner and be quiet, because like it's easy for me to come in and just say something when you're not with somebody 24/7, because
That's
then
true.
it's completely different. But
I
was curious, whenever you talk about love, a lot of times it gets associated with happiness. And do you ever feel that, like, for instance, people that are not in successful relationship, do you think too much attention is placed on loving somebody or finding love and happiness through somebody else, rather than like having that internally? Did I say that right? Internally?
No, I know you said
Well, the way I look at it is, I think a challenge with any relationship, whether you're married or not, is that you do look externally for happiness. But you know, we're set up because society, books, movies, songs always talk about, when I find that man or when I find that woman, you know, I'll be complete. But quite honestly, if you don't love the person looking back at you in the mirror, it's always going to be difficult. And you've got to find that love for yourself and acceptance of self. And a lot of it comes down to knowing who you are. And unfortunately, we have a large segment of society, the great majority, that really don't even know who they are themselves. That's why we're big proponents of taking the DISC assessment. Because it gives you an opportunity to recognize who you are, your preferences, your tendencies. It doesn't tell you who you are, but it tells you what you like in certain situations. And we're huge proponents. Or even why. And it makes you ask questions as to why you do the things that you do. And the more you come and have a recognition of self, then you're able to read other people a little bit better, and maybe even get a better understanding of where they're coming from. And opposites do attract. And it helps that when you are attracted to someone, and because we're complete opposites, and we're like a puzzle piece that fits together. And the things I love about her are some of the things that drive me nuts as well. And I think that people do confuse happiness with love. We had a discussion. I think a topic that we're going to do down the road is,
that's a good one, though.
Happiness versus love. Yeah, I think so, because people have a tendency to confuse the two. And love is something that I think is generated innately, but they think that because you love someone, therefore you're going to seek happiness. Happiness isn't an end state. It's not a destination. It's generated from, I think, gratefulness and understanding where you are and being. It's kind of hard to kind of really espouse, but it's one of those things where it comes from within. It doesn't come outside of you, and you can't look to someone else for that. But I do believe another person can assist you in your journey if you're aligned. They're seeking their happiness. I'm seeking my happiness, and then we're helping each other in that journey. I think that's what marriage can be, versus I need you, and if I don't have you, I'll never be happy.
Gotcha.
Or making, like you were kind of saying, the expectation of that other person to make them happy. You know, of course, I want to be happy, but I have to be able to first be happy here. And then you add some joy, but not, I have nothing here, and then you just give it all to me. That's very unhealthy. And I think that a lot of couples, I know one in particular, he makes comments about like, oh, well, what this person can do for him, what this person can't do for him, and why he's with this and blah, blah, blah. Because if he had, I mean, and it's all these external things. I'm like, well, where's your responsibility to yourself? You know,
right.
like he doesn't hold that. He places the responsibility of happiness on everyone else, but that's because, you know, the self-love that he should have for himself, he doesn't have. You know, we all have a past, we all have a history, we've all made mistakes, but until we learn how to learn from the mistakes and then let them go.
Right.
And see, okay, so what did I learn in that, blah, 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 whatever. And then I can move on and enhance and love myself. And then I feel like once I love myself, I can open myself up to be happy as far as, receive happiness from, you know, give and take, reciprocate the happiness with another person.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
I think so.
Yeah. I was gonna say, to your point, I've almost heard the opposite sometimes, where like you said, you have somebody that sees that somebody else has to fulfill their happiness, but then other people take it on themselves to say, I'm gonna do everything to make this person happy. And it's like, that's almost sounds like, to me recently when I heard it, I was like, that sounds like you're going on a suicide mission where you're going way out of your way to do something you were never intended to go do. But like we mentioned earlier, like what your culture puts out, what society, either through movies, TV, songs, books, this, that, and the other, it can be very muddied, like what you're supposed to be doing. Like, of course you want your family members, your best friends, you want them to be like happy, to be happy around you. But if you're not happy yourself internally, and if you don't know what a healthy version of that looks like, it can like, you basically pour everything you have into somebody else, and then when you're just burnt out and drained, you don't have anything left to give.
So true. It's
and
like,
then you're upset because you poured all this out, and then you're like left like, well, I did all this, and what about me? And kind of,
right.
And we go. It's like you start back at zero again and do the same thing all over.
you know, I don't remember who said it. There was it could have been E.T., CJ, one of the guys, or I listen to a lot of different podcasts, a lot of different motivational sources. And when somebody says you don't serve, when we talk about pouring into other people, the best way to do it, the healthiest way to do it, is not to pour from your cup, but to pour from the saucer. Your cup has to be so full that your cup overflows.
That's right.
And then what you do is, within the saucer that's capped, you pour from the saucer to ensure that you're still helping other individuals, but you're not depleting yourself.
I've never heard that word saucer before, but I like it. I think it. I think it. No, I like it because I was like for some reason I was thinking like UFO or something, but I'm like, oh no, you mean like kind of like would it be like a drip pan or?
Kind of. So you remember
like
the old,
cup
so like the teacups?
Plate that the
right.
Yeah, so you know, you get your plate where they, you know, see the old English movies where they bring you your tea, but they serve it on a little tiny plate.
Right.
That plate is the saucer. So if there's an overspill, it goes into the saucer. That plate.
Got you. Okay. It may have been TD Jakes that said that. I was listening to him recently.
You know, I want to say, because I heard that a long time ago. So
it might have been TD. I love
it. He was talking about like the overflow, and I heard a message telling about when, like, he's like, don't lose your head over this, and he talks about why like your head is the most important thing, why you're told to protect it, whether it's like whether you're in a like spiritual warfare or mental warfare. It's like everything always starts at your head. And whenever it talks about, I think it's the 23rd Psalm says, your cup runneth over. And it's like your cup, I'm probably messing it up now. But I was going to say, he said you can't get anything in your cup. Like say if you're holding a cup in your hand, unless the anointing that you have is on your head. And then once it runs over into your cup. And once your cup runs over, that, like you said, it hits that saucer, and then that's what you can be able to pour into people.
I love
because
that.
big difference when you're full and you keep like kind of like ET, you keep putting out all this energy. It's like, for me, like I can maybe do this for like a short period of time because I'm not that like high energy, but I can definitely feel like, okay, if I've gotten up, I did my morning routine, I worked out, I did the devotional, like I just keep feeding and feasting on this information. Like once I have a conversation like this, it's like, okay, I can go for a little bit longer. And then afterward, it doesn't feel like, oh man, like I gotta lay down for an hour, like recover, just be like, where am I right now?
Right, that's true.
Are you a high S or high C?
Both.
Both very high. Okay.
Yeah. The first time I took the test, I was a 99. And then recently I was a 70, 71. I kind of came down a little bit and then went up with the D personality. I think that's what I did, that intentionally to be able to like, okay, you got to start the podcast, put it out every week, and just kind of stay on this. Don't focus on the quality too much with the website. Even like I just did the best I could myself, and I was like, let me just pick something simple. Hopefully I'll get with the web designer later and fix what I can fix. But it's like, if it's going out and people are able to enjoy it, if they're able to listen to it and consume it, and they say they like it, like that little thing that I say, it really bothers me. It's like, if the people that it was intended for listen to it and they didn't complain, just leave it alone and keep it moving. Otherwise, like I think it's maybe not this week, but maybe two or 3 weeks from now, the podcast that I'm going to be putting out, at some part of it while I was recording, I'm talking with one of the guys, and I was like, oh man, like I need to put this out. It's episode number 2. And he's just like, well, I didn't get to edit it the way I wanted to edit, but I was like, it's got to go out within like the next 15 minutes. So it's like, well, let me do it now. Like, let me literally do it now so I can stay consistent and commit to what I said I was going to do. Otherwise, it's just going to be like, okay, well, you started and you stopped. Now what?
You know, Nikki always talks about, just get the content out, because like you said, the message, if it's solid content, solid messaging, it'll get out and people will appreciate it. We had a podcast, it was about 2 or 3 podcasts ago. Mm-hmm. And
interview?
Yes. No, and we ended up having one of our listeners in New York, who we picked up organically.
Oh.
Yeah. She emailed us, I know you're not supposed to roll over and check your phone first thing in the morning, but on my podcast release mornings, I always roll over on Wednesday morning to check my phone to make sure everything's good, to see that the podcast loaded. Mm-hmm. And I had an email from her, like urgent. She's like, there's something clapping on your entire podcast.
That was the interview when you interviewed me.
Oh, that's right. I interviewed you. Oh. And somehow or another, I turned on the metronome in the podcast. So the metronome had that ticking the entire podcast. And it was nuts. Now, if you had told me to put the metronome on, I wouldn't know where it was. I had to search to figure out how to turn it off. And it was so bothersome. But people loved that. It was one of our highest rated podcasts. Even though it drove me nuts. Still drives me nuts. Yeah. But people loved hearing her and her story and her perspective. So it was really cool.
He hijacked my my interview. I was like, really? You never done it before? You interviewed me and all of a sudden now you want to click this thing on. Oh my gosh.
It was called Her Story. I since then though, I've been able to go back and fix it. I was able to remaster it without the metronome. And so if anybody was to go now and listen to it, they would hear it without the ticking. But,
gotcha.
But I hear you, sometimes you just got to get it out there.
Yeah. It's funny, this week's episode, I was like, oh man, I'm on a roll, like episode 13, put it out. And then the next morning I was like, let me listen to it, make sure it's good. And then what was supposed to be like 40 minutes was 6 minutes. And I was like, whoa, let me go fix that right now. And somehow or another, I guess when I uploaded the file, it must have cut it by mistake. And it just uploaded the first 6 minutes of the podcast and not like the rest of it, but fixed it, put it out there, and I was just like, okay, just keep promoting it. But it's like, what's funny, I think I told my mom, I was like, oh, I've got to go fix this real quick. He's like, oh, okay, how are you going to do it? I was like, oh, don't worry, it's just going to take a few minutes just with technology. Like you fix it on SoundCloud. I was like, okay, just put the right file, go to Anchor, put the right file up. And luckily, like YouTube, it's fine because it's just the video. And sometime in 2020, I'm going to figure out how to edit it properly or get with somebody that can help me edit the video file.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear you. It takes time,
Yeah.
but as long as people thoroughly enjoy it and you've niched properly and you're talking to the right people, I mean, they'll be there for the journey.
Yeah, that's the whole reason. Like I'm going to the extreme branding thing, not next week, but I guess is it next week, since this coming week is the first week of January.
Yeah, I know it's coming up soon. Yeah, I know Nikki's amped about that. I'm surprised you got in because that closed down quick.
Yeah, well, I mean, I got in, and then I think I got in once they put it out, but it just took me a while to kind of get into the group because I've just got different things going on, and I'm just, for one, trying to stay focused on the podcast, and then just work on other things little by little, and not have like too many things, because as being a high SNC, it's like I always want to just go with the flow. So it's like, oh, here's a program, oh, here's a group, oh, here's a group, and I'm just like join, and it's like, wait, like if one of these things don't go together, like I just need to stop, like pick one thing that's going to work, put the attention there, and then if I'm trying to speed it up too quick, it's being able to go through the courses and just say, okay, make sure I understand my mode of communication, find the right audience, and just work on that. Better for it to take 5 years and it work out than me like try and just spark it up in a few months and then just ruin it all together.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I think it's a great venue. I think it's a great platform that you have.
Thank you.
Again, we're super appreciative. This is great.
Thank you. Oh, well, I know we just hit the 30-minute mark, but I'm like,
as long as you need us.
Got you. I was just thinking in my head, I was like, okay, just stop overthinking it. But you guys, are you guys out in California?
Yes.
Okay. What part?
Northern California. We're right outside of Sacramento.
Okay. So you get like the snow and all that, or no?
It's cold though.
Gotcha.
It's cold, but no snow. No, I think it snowed
every blue moon.
Every blue moon, yeah, but closer to Nevada, like towards the mountains, is where snow is.
Gotcha.
So yeah, we're not that north. Or
the Sacramento area is pretty. We're still in the Sacramento County. It's pretty insulated. I mean, we're 2 hours away from snow, mountains. 2 hours away from San Francisco. There's a lot of different things that we can do.
Yeah.
Right.
We come back here. It's a town called Galt. If you blink, you'll miss it.
Couple blinks, not just one blink. But yeah, we're in the valley, so I mean, it gets really cold. You know, there's we don't have a problem here with flooding, but there's flooding and stuff that happens when it rains. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And did you both grow up in California?
Yes, I grew up in I was born in Sac, lived in Sac for the first 11 years, and my family moved to the Bay Area, and then when I was an adult, I moved back to Sacramento.
Okay.
So.
And I'm born and bred Sacramento, and then I went in the Air Force, traveled a bit around the world, then swore I would never come back to Sac, and here I am.
Yeah.
It's funny how that happens.
Oh yeah, that's so, and it is funny how that happens. Like I've spent the last couple months back home, where I went to high school and things, spending some time with my parents, And it's probably been like close to 11 years since I've spent that much time like in that area, and just kind of walking around certain areas. I'm like, oh wow, I remember where I first tried out for a sports team, or maybe the second time. Like this one was a tryout where it's like you can either make it or not make it based on your talent. The other ones, it's like if you just sign up, you're on the team. And like I'm originally from Cameroon, which is known well for playing soccer, but I wasn't like one of those all-star kids coming up. So I just remember in 6th grade, there's a track there, or there's a field there where they would basically bus you over from school and you would practice there. And then from there, you have your parents pick you up. And I was just walking around and I was just like, oh yeah, I remember I tried out here for the soccer team and I just, was not good. I found out real quick. It's like, yep, our hometown team is great and this, that, and the other. But I was like, I'm not that guy. But just kind of walking around and thinking back on memories that maybe weren't so fond, but now it's like there's an appreciation for it. I think it's been one of the better things of like being home and just like going somewhere, not because you have to, but because you choose to.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, okay, like I can see why this is cool, or I kind of have a better understanding of like how money kind of moves around the city, just from having like the bird's eye view, or listening to Jamal and just different people like that just focus on like the tangibles.
So true. So when you visit the area I grew up in, NPR just did I think it was a 5 or 6 part series on my old neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And it's called Making Meadowview, and it's Capital City NPR. Mm-hmm. And a friend of mine told me that it was on there, and in listening to it, they're telling the story of a lot of my youth. Mm-hmm. And in my neighborhood, I grew up dead smack in the middle of this area called Meadowview in Sacramento. Yeah. And they're talking about people and places and things and occurrences. And it's like, wow, I remember all this. I was right there. And when you're going through it, you don't, you take it for granted, I think. And
right.
When you grow up, you have a tendency to romanticize what it was like back in the day. And, I could tell some stories, but we won't go into it because I know this is a PG. And I've grown from then.
Maybe we'll save it for a special segment. We'll just be like, this is for
right, Jekyll and Hyde.
Like,
yeah, exactly.
Your eyes only, or just like viewer discretion advised. Like, be careful.
Right, exactly. We call it and how they grow. Everybody has a past. Everyone has a story, and that's one of the things that we do in our podcast. Is I'm Married into Crazy. We try and talk about how we have a story, but we recognize that a lot of couples have stories. But recognize that these are chapters in your life. So everybody has a chapter, and you're progressing and you're reading. And one thing that we like to go back to is that, I met her. We met each other on chapter 26 of our lives. And our kids and other couples have a tendency to look at chapter 50 and think they're supposed to go from 1 to 50. And it's like, no, you don't see, all the, it's kind of like an iceberg, right? You only see the tip of the iceberg. They don't see the other 75% beneath the water that's supporting that glacier that you see above the water. And we try to remind people that it's what you don't see that really keeps everything afloat. And those are things we try and talk about, the little nuances. And it's kind of like when you deal with your history. It's people don't remember when we were about to get divorced. When we were doing, half our family practically forgot all about that.
Yeah, that's true.
And we bring them like, oh yeah, I do remember that.
You guys did have that brain thing going on.
Yeah, oh yeah, he did get stabbed. All these different things. It's crazy, people forget. Yeah. I forget. I was one that got stabbed through my heart, and yet,
but you did.
Scars.
You weren't joking.
Oh, no.
I was just laughing and going, no, my bad. I wasn't laughing at your pain. I was just laughing, thinking we were.
You were like, man, he did live in a bad neighborhood.
Right. That's where my head was at.
Oh yeah. So
that's a very real story.
yeah, we met on a blind date, and when we actually we met on a blind connection. People forced us to meet each other.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then 4 months after we met, she told everybody I was a nerd. I wasn't her type. All of that. And
You're absolutely right.
4 months later, we were engaged.
Yes.
Nice.
And she had an estranged ex-boyfriend that just would not leave her alone. And long story short, he forced his way into her house and attacked her. He and I got into it. We got into a fight. As they pulled me off of him, he ended up stabbing me with a serrated kitchen knife, and it went all the way through my heart. And so people are like, oh, okay, he's speaking metaphorically.
No, it's real.
No, 2 open heart surgeries later,
Mm-hmm.
the knife went into my heart. First medical procedure was life-saving, right? They cracked my chest open, go in, they repair what they saw, and thought everything was good. I had an amazing nurse during ICU when I was in recovery. She didn't like the way some of my vitals were presenting themselves. And she's an angel, because she went to the attending cardiologist and told her that something's odd about the way he's responding. Like his chest is vibrating rather than rising and falling. And the cardiologist told her that, and I remember this, the cardiologist said, well, it's consistent with the trauma. She goes, well, how can it be consistent? Because you just told that group of students that you've never seen anything like this, the way that I was stabbed. Because if it would have, the knife would have traveled 1 millimeter in any direction, my heart would have exploded. And that's nothing but God. And he did literally bring in a group of students, or about 7 or 8 students, and he had a model of a heart with a pencil showing them, and I gave them permission to do this, showing them how it entered, and explaining to them how there's no reason why he should be alive right now, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, but you just said that. So she went over his head to the chief of cardiology for this hospital, and they ordered a bunch of tests, and they discovered that the knife went all the way through. There was a small hole on the backside of my heart. So every time the chamber's filled, it was like, imagine a balloon. If you take a balloon full of air and you put it underwater and had like a little pinhole, that's what was happening. It was escaping out the back of my heart. And they had to go in, and I had a 60% chance of dying the second time they did the surgery. And we survived that. And it was probably one of the best things that ever happened, because it solidified or got me that much closer to God. We still have our arguments and disagreements, but brought me that much closer, and it gives you perspective on life. Being a high D, high I, I can be pretty forceful at times, but I don't take things as serious at times as I used to.
Gotcha.
My wife was like, I don't know about that.
I don't know about that.
But trust me, I was a lot worse at one point. Everything bothered me if it wasn't a certain way. And, you just, something still issues. She leaves the cabinet doors open on purpose because she knows it drives me nuts. But anyway, I mean, that's part of our story, is we survived that, and our relationship undergoes a lot of stress, a lot of tension when you deal with that. And we found ways of rising above that. And that's, again, something else we talk about on Married into Crazy.
Yeah, every relationship it has its own stressors and tension without adding to it. And that was a lot to add to it, especially in the very beginning. It wasn't like we were solid, we were 10 years in, and then this happened. It's like at the very, very beginning, and it's like, okay, that was so it was almost like should we continue on in the relationship, or should we let it go? It was one of those points where we could we could just walk away, because we haven't invested a whole bunch of anything yet, but it was.
Ask you, do you have any other people I should be worried about?
Right. Thank you. Oh, it was crazy. The newspaper wrote an article about it, and they painted this crazy story of a love triangle gone bad. And
sensationalized.
Luckily, I had a friend in the media at the time, and it was one of my best friends. It was my best friend's mother. She was a known media personality. She went in and got them to do a full retraction, but nobody reads the retraction. Everybody remember that. So that fueled some of my family's animosity and tension that grew between them and my wife, which
Gotcha.
We had to grow from that. It was a lot. It was a lot.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you didn't just like brush past that story. He was like, oh, stabbing and da da da, and then I wanted to get some bread. I'm like, wait, you got stabbed? Like, come on.
Yeah, 2 open heart surgeries, a near divorce.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess at that point, with that happening at the very start of the relationship, like, how did you guys decide, like, yeah, like we're moving forward, like we should just give it a shot?
For me, actually, at the time, it wasn't even a question. You know, I felt like at that we had found each other, and we're getting married. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's how it was. Just no questions asked. There was nothing to. All I had to do was wait for him to heal, basically, so that we could continue on with not just with our plans to get married, but with the marriage, the wedding, all of that stuff. Mm. So at no point did it ever be like, well, I don't think we should move forward. I mean, now previously, before that, when my ex started coming back around and he was bothering me, I was like, went out to dinner and I told him, I was like, I think we should break up. And he was like, what? You know, because it was kind of out of the blue for him. Yeah. I was like, because, you know, he's bothering me. He's coming around all the time. He's showing up at my job. He was just exhibiting these crazy behaviors, you know. Yeah. And I said, what I don't want is for you and him to have an altercation of some sort. And he was like, well, Lovey said, okay, so do you love me? And I was like, well, yes, obviously, you know. And he was like, okay, then that's all that, you know, we're not even going to worry about him. We're going to move forward in our relationship. I had went to get a restraining order. It was denied because based on previous history with him, he never exhibited any type of abusive behavior as far as like, you know, erratic craziness. Yeah. Not that I guess there's certain levels of crazy. So he never reached a level where they were concerned. So, but what they did not advise me of was like afterwards, like, oh, you could have filed a harassment suit or something like that. And all these different things come up after the fact. I'm like, oh, well, thanks guys. Thanks for letting me know that, you know, so, you know, there were, like Lovey was saying about, there were things that people just did not know that were happening. All they know was that, well, when it came out that my ex came around and stabbed him, they didn't know all about the other, him bothering me at work and all these different things. I went to my manager where I was working at the time. And I was like, okay, this is a situation. He's bothering me. He's coming in. I mean, he just showed up at my job one day. I'm at my desk and I'm working and I turn around and he's right there with a ring in his hand. And I was like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm proposing. And, you know, I want to see it. And I was like, no, we're not, you know. And I was like, okay, that was fatal attraction-ish for me. So I told my boss and he was like, okay. So the very next day they installed security outside to where everyone had to have a badge to get in because before you could just walk in the office. So right after that happened, the very next day, everyone had to have a badge to get into our office. So I was like, you know, and my friend who was there the night that Lovey and I met, she was like, oh, that was your fault? Now that everybody got the inconvenience. I was like, really? So, you know, there was a lot of things that were going on behind the scenes that we just didn't talk about. We just kind of dealt with each other. And I never felt like, oh, he's not going to want to marry me after this. When this happened, that was, you know, the whole thought was for him to be better. That's all my mind kept thinking about was him getting better. And actually a lot of the guilt that I carried too. I carried a tremendous amount of guilt. Oh, it was just like, I was heavy in it, you know? Yeah. So I never ever felt like we should just break up. I mean, not after he got stabbed. I'm like, yo, you stabbed now, you mine. So let's just go.
Yeah, I don't know. My boys are like, are you sure about this?
Don't say nah.
No, actually, my family was reticent. They had concerns, but it never crossed my mind. When I came out, You wake up intubated, you can't speak, got the tubes down your throat. I saw my mom sitting next to me crying, but when I came out of that, at no point was it was like, okay, is my mom okay? What happened? And then when they explained what had transpired, my next thing is, okay, well, where's Snooks? Well, at the time it was, where's Ronna? I wanted her by my side. It was a foregone conclusion that we were going to be together. And I hate for it to sound so fairy tale-ish, whereas like when I met her, I just knew. In this equation, it was, first time I met her, I said, this is her. I called my cousin and said, I met the one. I know I'm going to marry this girl. But it was one of those things where if you go through, we talk about bringing in the harvest, right? And in order to bring in a harvest, you go through a lot of chaff. You have to sit there and whittle through to get your true harvest. Everything that you bring in isn't meant for consumption, isn't meant to be kept. Some things have to be tossed aside. And I liken our relationship to everything that I had been to other people and everything that other people had been to me and all the experiences prior to me meeting Snooks was the chaff. This is the stuff I had to go through and the growth in order to be prepared for this relationship. And I just knew that she was my harvest.
Gotcha.
Our relationship was my harvest. And it's not to say that I was a catch before that. Because people that know me, they always remark to her like, this is a different dude, because I was a very different individual when I was in the military. And we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, we wouldn't have dated. We would not have dated.
Gotcha. So you guys were just like on far opposite ends of the spectrum.
Oh, we were on different planets.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, no, we wouldn't. If you were still in the military, we would not have dated. No.
Gotcha.
No,
that's a great story. I hate to wrap it up at the moment, but it looks like my phone's about to die on me here.
No worries.
But I definitely want to continue this. Are you guys going to be in Miami?
No, for the 1%.
Yeah.
We're not going to be there.
Gotcha. Well, I guess I'll be there for the 1%, but I'll be there for the thing before it. But somehow or another, if I don't meet you in person sometime in 2020, we will do another one of these for sure.
Definitely.
Absolutely. I appreciate it.
Definitely.
We appreciate your time.
Thank you. We really
Likewise.
appreciate it.
And before you guys go, could you just tell the people how they can get a hold of you, where they can find you online, on social media, all of that?
Yeah, you can.
That's your thing. Lovey always likes to tell me, that's my line. Okay.
No. So our website is marriedintocrazy.com. And then you can reach out to us at coaching@marriedintocrazy.com. Also, Snooks and Lovey at Gmail is another way you can reach us. And our Instagram is Married Into Crazy. Everything is Married Into Crazy, even on Facebook. So you look up Married Into Crazy, you'll find us.
Yeah, nice. And Snooks and Lovey, that's your nicknames?
That it is. I'm Lovey.
And I'm Snooks.
I love it. Thank you, guys.
Thank
you. Asher, have a blessed day.
This is the It's My Time podcast with Asher Chua.